Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Money. I'm your host Fatima Attarwala. My guest today is Faraz Zaidi. He's the chairman of Wasl Mobility Modaraba. This is a company that focuses on leasing 2 and 3 wheelers. Lately, their focus has been on electrification. So the conversation today is going to center around the future of EVs in terms of 2 and 3 wheelers and what their future is in Pakistan. Hello, sir. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
So, I think that this has been my peg for almost every podcast I've shot lately, the war and the fuel prices. The fuel prices went above 400. Now they're slightly down. At least at the time of the shooting, they are less than 400. But that could change anyway. We keep on saying that, yes, we have cars and fuel and all that, but the burden of higher petrol prices usually falls on those driving the two-wheelers, which is the majority of our masses. So.
Right.
You have been financing two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and now you say the focus is on electrification. Why two-wheelers and why electrification?
So the answer to why two-wheelers is quite simple. So our company essentially focuses on providing financing where banks don't. And the 2 and 3 wheeler market, whether it's petrol or electrification, has not been financed by banks. It's too small a ticket item for them. They find it hard to originate and service. This market, so we don't compete with banks, we compete with the informal sector, right? Which are the dealers that sell these products on installments. That was the reason we focus on it. And essentially, Pakistan is a two-wheeler market, right? We sell 2 million motorcycles a year. The total fleet size is over 30 million, right? It's not a car market. We may be car people, but the average Pakistani is not. So that's where we're focusing. And on the electrification front, we have been bullish electrification on two-wheelers even before the war. The war, we think, has just sped things up, right? So before the war, we calculated the operating cost of an electric two-wheeler to be 20%, maybe 25% of petrol equivalent. After the currently it's probably around 15%. So the war is only.
So it would. So if I would just understand it, 15% of what?
Of operating cost, right? So if you have a petrol bike, you are spending money on petrol. You're spending money on engine oil, on spark plugs and filters, etc. And if I take the equivalent units of electricity consumed, even at 50 rupees. You are right now between 15 and 20% operating cost.
So if it costs 100 rupees to fuel and maintain, or
20 rupees,
it would cost 20 rupees. So there is a huge difference in
correct.
operating costs and fuel for electric vehicles.
That's correct.
Electric
for all electric. This is true of all electric vehicles. The problem is that the initial cost is high, right? So your CD70 is 168,000. Your CG125 is probably 250. A proper lithium bike is over 3 lakhs, right? So you have to spend more to save later.
So a lithium bike is 300,000 and a
300
regular
to plus, yeah.
Yeah. So and a regular bike would be what?
CD70 is 168.
168. So that's, I mean, the price difference is double.
Yeah.
But then what would be the payback? How soon would
But it depends on how much you drive, right? So the more you drive, the quicker the payback.
quicker.
Okay, so if you're in Karachi, actually people drive a lot more in Karachi because the city never ends.
It's a huge city.
So I get confused coming from Lahore, and delivery people and commercial usage of the vehicle is the fastest payback.
So is Food Panda, Yango, different
Well,
mobility?
we started our business with Food Panda. So we are the largest provider primarily of petrol bikes to Food Panda riders in Pakistan, Pan-Pakistan. We also work with Yango. And we independently came to the conclusion that electrification is coming because for us it makes no difference. We can finance petrol bikes and we can finance electric bikes. We just have a conviction that the market is going to change because the economics are just so much in favor of this, right?
When you say the market is going to change, what is your vision? How soon or how long will it take?
I think it's pretty interesting. How soon do you replace 30 million? The total fleet will take a long time, right? But of the 2 million, we think last year 150,000 scooties and electric bikes were sold, and that number is probably going to be higher.
150,000 across Pakistan.
Across Pakistan, roughly. That's our guess. Nobody knows. And there's 2 million bikes sold in Pakistan, at least registered, right? But let me tell you why we're so bullish. We have a view from the consumer point of view. We have a view from the country.
Because right now we are like less than what, 1% of it? 2 million and to less than 200,000. So the rate of adoption is very low right now.
No. If you look at the year, most of this came in the back end of the year, and especially since the war, the biggest problem with the electric manufacturers is that they don't have stock right now. Okay, so the demand side is not the issue. Right now, it's a supply side issue, and we're
so
talking,
when you're saying that it's less than 10%, it's because of supplies. We do not have enough EV importers, EV manufacturers for two-wheelers.
Combination. We are in the early days of adoption, right? And then there is currently a supply issue. So I'm not saying if there wasn't a supply issue, we'd be at 50%. That's going to take several years. But I think what's more important is to understand, why it works for consumers. I think I've laid out the math for you there, that it's 20% of the cost. By the way, the government is about to launch PAVE 2, which I think is going to be a subsidy of 75,000 or maybe 80,000.
In the upcoming budget?
I think it'll be after the budget. I don't know if it's part of the budget, but PAVE 1 was not a success, but we can talk about that later. But then we talk about why we think it's right for the country, right? So if you look at the interesting thing of 2- and 3-wheelers, it's largely localized in Pakistan. So even an electric motorbike will be anywhere from 30 to 50% locally manufactured.
Really?
The frame, the suspension, the tires, they're all made here, right? It's just that right now the battery, the controller, and the motor that comes from abroad. So if I look at the dollar payback for Pakistan, now let's leave the consumer aside, and we say a bike is costing, let's say, $1,200, and it's 40% localized. So let's say you get to whatever you get to $600 out the door, $700 out the door. The payback on the bike in terms of fuel saved, right, dollar for dollars for the state of Pakistan, we envision is 1 to 1.5 years. It's the same for 3-wheelers. For a car, it's 10 years. Put another way, the first vehicles to get electrified are those where the value of fuel consumed relative to the capital cost of the vehicle is highest. Okay, so for a rickshaw, which is traditionally LPG powered in Pakistan, the gentleman can spend the entire capital cost in fuel costs alone in a year. Nobody does that in a 2 crore car, right? 2 crores car. So that makes it a no-brainer for the country. If we can move our 2- and 3-wheelers from petrol or LPG to electricity, the dollar payback is a year and a half. We already have surplus electricity. It reduces our dependence on petrol. And we have this peculiar phenomenon that exists in a lot of countries where, every time we have a fiscal deficit, we have a balance of payments crisis. It happens in a lot of other countries, but
we have a fiscal deficit because of the balance of payment crisis.
No, it's the other way. The fiscal deficit causes an increase in consumption, which causes a balance of payments crisis because we don't export anything.
Chicken and egg,
okay.
Yeah.
If you shift a meaningful amount of transport to electrification, that won't go away, but it'll get less severe, right? Because a lot of that imports that you're doing is fuel.
But see, again, I can understand the economics for, it's like the solar revolution, right?
Yeah.
It was a grassroots level because it made so much sense that if you have a roof and if you have the sun, put solar panels and stop buying electricity from the government as much as you can. Now with the EVs, yes, we have excess capacity in electricity, but so much of the revenue that is generated by the government is because of that petroleum levy.
Yeah.
So in the long run, like, the government is disincentivizing solar. It might not want EVs. It would like to raise taxes on fuel.
I think, well, this is a particular, only we can find ourselves in this sort of conundrum where what's best for the country is not being pursued because we have a fiscal problem which can only be solved by, a petrol levy. I don't think.
Very vicious cycles we find ourselves in.
We are a knack for that. But I don't think the government, just because it's dependent on petrol levy, it may be dependent on petrol levy for raising rupees, but our biggest dollar outflow is crude. So I think, and we've met with the government. They get it on electrification of 2.
They seem to get a lot of things that they do not implement. But I absolutely, even if the government doesn't get it, even if the government doesn't want to do it, the maths of it just add up, right?
Well, so you mentioned solar, and I will also tell you, I was one of the earlier adopters of solar. I was outside of Pakistan. I had put up in my parents' house probably like, I don't know, 15 years ago, right? And everyone was a naysayer. What percentage, as you were saying, what percentage of that time was solar? Nothing. And then costs came down, net metering was involved, and the infrastructure, and then it was the people that took over. Incidentally, the same thing happened in CNG, right? So CNG took off when the incentives were right. Nobody cared, KG, where was the infrastructure, where was it, right? The people will vote with their feet if the economics are right, and that's happening in electrification.
No, for sure. I have a friend who has a two-wheeler parts manufacturing facility, and he was like, in the recent days, the amount of queries we are getting for two-wheeler electric vehicles has gone up. It has shot up to the roof. So I do see a future, but then there's so many bottlenecks, like charging infrastructure.
Okay, charging infrastructure, I think is the biggest non-issue when
Really?
it comes to two-wheelers. So most of our customers, they require a AC socket, 3-pin socket to charge, right? And most of them right now have access to that. The other thing that people underestimate about our country, even though we're ingenious people. So if I put 1 million electric bikes out, and let's say I give them out for free to people in Karachi, I have no doubt in my mind, without me spending a single penny, that those will be charged and on the streets and working. These people will figure it out, whether it's some coca wala who puts a socket up there. So I think there's a lot of people that are pushing charging infrastructure. It may matter for cars. I personally don't even think it matters for cars other than on highways. Nobody is not buying an electric bike because of lack
Charging
of infrastructure.
So why are they not buying bikes? There are
They are
more
buying.
BYD sharks on the road than I think two-wheelers, at least from what I see in Karachi.
It will take time. So,
But as I said, the maths have been making sense for some time, and EVs have been around, like the vehicles have been around for a few years now. So
Just a
you
couple of
see
years.
Deepal, you see BYD, a lot of
Yeah,
BYDs,
yeah.
but not that many two-wheelers.
Well,
Why is that?
I'll tell you that. So I'll tell you another interesting thing which will explain why you don't see it. In revenue terms, the 125 for Honda is the same as the CD70. It has been growing faster in volumes than the CD70 for several years. Okay, and I think it's probably like a third or maybe half the volume of the CD70. But when you go out on the road, you don't see that many 125s, and you'd say, well, as a percentage of what I see on the road, it's just a few percent. It's because our fleet is so large. It's 30 million bikes. So if in the last 5 years 125 has really taken off, it will take you several more years before it becomes a regular occurrence on the road. I don't know about in Karachi, but in Lahore now, you see electric bikes on the road fairly regularly.
I've heard that there's a lot more adoption in Lahore than in Karachi. It's the same way there's a lot more solar in Lahore than Karachi, because in Lahore you have roofs, in Karachi you have apartments.
Yeah.
So is it because of our road infrastructure that Karachi has not been able to?
Well, I think it could be because right now, even in Lahore, the majority of bikes are scooties in electric. And scooties have this problem where they have very low clearance generally, right? So
By clearance, you mean how low they are?
How low they are, right? So,
and with Karachi and the
I mean, you guys barely have roads here, right? So
painful but true.
But in electric motorcycles, you won't have that issue. And I do think we met a manufacturer yesterday in Karachi, just one manufacturer, who's taken an advance of over 7,000 bikes. He's just waiting to supply. It'll come in over 2 months. So that's not, and this has all happened in the last month or two. So these are coming here as well.
So do you think because of the insane increase in fuel prices, in the next few months, we'll see just sudden influx of motorbikes because they're in the process right now?
Yeah, you'll see a lot. I mean, it depends. The numbers, it's such a vast city. I don't know how visible they will be, but you'll see because they've already been ordered, right? So right now we have a supply shortage. But I want to make just a related point, which is the price of fuel has gone up. And if the war ends and the price of fuel comes down, we're not too fast, because what's become very apparent to people is the inherent volatility in the price of fuel, right? So nobody goes every week to figure out what the price of electricity is. It's not that volatile, right? But people now...
And again, if you can have solar,
Yeah.
And if you can have electrification of vehicles, so much of your
Yeah.
household expenses just drastically
That's
go
right.
down.
That's right.
High capex initially, but then the
But that's why
long-term
we think there's a
benefits,
need for financing, right? So,
Yeah.
which is what we're trying to solve is, okay, you have a net present value positive investment, but you can't afford it. So, you give, essentially what we're saying is you give X months of fuel savings to me in the form of profit, and then the rest is yours to enjoy.
But see, one of the I head the weekly business and finance pages, and I run a lot of electric vehicle articles. And one of the things I read is that as soon as the EV two-wheeler leaves the showroom, a lot of its value is lost, like 70-80% of that value. So that means that it doesn't have as strong a secondary market.
You're absolutely right. I don't think 70-80% is the correct number.
Say 50%.
Yeah, there is no resale value, right?
Yeah.
As far when we do our operating, when we do our underwriting, we assume no at this stage. So what you're really doing is you're taking a product and you're saving so much money on it relative to your petrol bike. So the way we sell it is, after 5 years, so we think it'll last at least 5 years. A good lithium battery, you'll have saved more than enough to buy it again, right?
But when we have more EV two-wheelers on the road, do you think there will be a secondary market for
Yes, absolutely. So I'll tell you something very interesting that happened after the war. By the way, this is not unique to two-wheelers. When Tesla launched electric cars, they always had tough times figuring out the resale value, and a lot of manufacturers actually themselves provided a buyback, at a certain price. When the war happened, I would urge you to look at what happened to used e-tron prices in Pakistan. They went up. On park wheels, e-tron prices went up.
I do not know. E-tron the most popular?
Audi e-tron was the, it's the SUV, right? So.
But Audi e-tron is not like mass market, right? It's not for
mass
the
market.
Yeah. It is still for the more elite segments.
It definitely for the more elite segment, but they care about resale value just as much as anyone else because they have to buy their next car in 5 to 6 years, right? So I'm just saying that the resale value will be discovered by the market over time. It's not something that I can give to you in right now. Nobody knows.
So
and by the way, so right now, so we had thought we had gotten rid of this system of on cars.
Yes.
But there are 3 vehicles right now that have on in them in Pakistan, and there's some form of EV. I'm talking about cars now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now the on money is for EVs rather than the usual Toyota Corollas and Civics and whatnot.
So for a product where you're worried about resale because it's a different engine or a depleting battery, to be selling it on is quite.
On money finds its way.
On, by the way, you should probably have a subtitle that explains what on is. To
yes, or the premium that you pay just to have the car delivered to you earlier.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So Karachi, there's a lot of theft. I mean, I have been mugged at least 3-4 times. I've lost count. My husband has been mugged or lost his mobile, something or the other, over a dozen times. This is Karachi.
You moved to Lahore.
Yes, well, we are used to it. So again, the bulk of the cost of a motorcycle is the battery.
Correct.
And most of those motorcycles are parked outside because you live in an apartment, you don't have a space to park it. So how do you protect that?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. And this is something because we get our bikes insured. So right now they're insured for theft. Right now in our portfolio, there's been multiple thefts of petrol bikes, but there hasn't been one of an electric bike because how would you dispose of it, right?
Nobody would buy it, right?
So then.
Oh, so when you have a lot more EV two-wheelers, you'll have a lot more theft as well, because you'll have a secondary market.
Yeah,
but that's true for anything.
The thieves have to make a living too, right? So, with regards to battery theft, so most of the two-wheelers that we finance have fixed batteries. They're not that easy to take apart. Okay, this problem is more pronounced in any swappable technology. So there are companies that are providing, to reduce the initial cost, they're providing a smaller battery which you swap out with a fully charged one. But to make something swappable, it has to be easily removable, right? And there you might see more theft. So this is something that the manufacturers will have to work on. This is a concern because these batteries can be used for a home backup. We all know the mobiles guys that had batteries; they had big theft problems. But I think I'll tell you an interesting story. We were doing petrol bikes for Food Panda, and in Lahore, 80% of the demand from Food Panda riders was for Honda. And we want CD70, very good brand, right? Everybody wants it. We came to Karachi, went to Food Panda riders, and there was no demand for Honda. And so our team was like, why aren't you guys choosing Honda? Everybody wants a Honda. And they said, no, this gets stolen too much because the resale is so good. So unfortunately,
you can't even have there was a time that you couldn't have a very nice, clean, shiny motorbike because if it did, it was like,
that's right.
steamy.
So the theft problem is not an electric problem, right?
No, it is a very Karachi problem.
It's a very Karachi problem. But I'll tell you
we are the city that is supposed to carry two mobiles, you know, one for the chor bhai and one for us.
So what happened, this is our Lahori naiveness, my team told them, don't worry, the bikes are insured. So they all took Hondas. And we had more theft in 1 week in Karachi than the whole year in Lahore.
I can believe that. I can also believe some of that to be a scam because we are also good at that.
Yeah, good.
So speaking of which, what are your default rates like? You've been financing two-wheelers for some time now.
We've been doing 2 and 3-wheelers. Our default rates are sub 2%.
Oh, sub 2%, so less than 2%.
So less 2%. So the motorcycle, the two-wheeler, and the dealers know this. So we charge more than banks, but we don't charge what the dealers charge, which are exorbitant rates. The motorcycle by itself is a lower default item. The reason is it's in my name until it's paid off, right? It's a means to earn a livelihood. And it's not an impulse purchase. Okay, so an air conditioner or a television which somebody is selling to you on installments, people get excited. They buy a phone they can't really afford, and then we have obviously our own credit underwriting, which we've built a model. We've got a team. So alhamdulillah, we're doing under 2% default rates. You can do a lot of business.
So one of the challenges that the banks face, or at least they keep highlighting it, is that there's no credit history for the small guy. Especially when you're talking about motorbikes, it is the small guy who's getting it, the one who has less than 100% monthly income. So how are you able to assess him and offer him?
So it depends. It depends on the channel that he's coming through. So we have a great relationship with Food Panda. Food Panda provides data to us on the riders' earnings, their tenure, etc., and assists us in collections, even though they have no guarantee. They don't guarantee the loans. So that's worked really well for us to the extent where Food Panda riders, because we are lower cost than they have no access to banks, right? So the same guy has taken 2 or 3 bikes. He's paid one off, he's taken another, and we call them up. Why do you need another bike? You just paid off. He said, well, I'm taking it from my brother, off the same income stream. Because you're cheaper, and so we've already demonstrated he's paid one off. So we give him a bike. That's worked out well. Yango, same thing. Yango operates with partners, 70 partners in Pakistan. They assist us, same thing. They provide us the data, earnings history, help us make sure we're collecting. That works. On the electric side, which is primarily retail, we get paid. Our model is very simple. It's primarily a salaried person. So we look at the bank account, we look at the pay slip, we look at electricity bill, and they all tend to perform. So the electric bike customer right now, so Food Panda people are hard to underwrite because they are at the lower end of the earning spectrum. The current electric bike customer is a salaried individual, and generally, unless he's a bad apple, he has the money to service his loan.
So when we talk about electrification of two-wheelers, I think the gig economy is the place to start because they are the ones on the road the most, and it makes the most financial sense for them as well, given if the equation is the more you ride your bike, the faster the payback is. So for them it makes sense. So has there been demand from Food Panda, Yango, any of those?
We've given out bikes to Food Panda riders, electric bikes, and there has been demand. There's a lot of demand right now actually, because since the prices have spiked. The challenge over there is, we're looking at 330 bike because these guys also need range, right? So the more range you need, the higher the price. So getting the economics to work based on their earnings has been a challenge, which is where I think if the PAVE scheme comes in and you're able to reduce the price 75 or whatever thousand, it'll make a huge difference. Right?
Can you explain that scheme?
So PAVE 1 and PAVE 2 are schemes by the government of Pakistan to encourage electrification of 2 and 3-wheelers. PAVE 1, we went and met the government to give our input. And I think it was 75,000 rupees per bike. They wanted to give 40,000 bikes. And they said,
So 75,000 for, say, a 300,000 bike.
yeah, roughly, right? 250 to 350, something like that, right? And they had we have a very competent people, by the way, at the EDB and at the Ministry of Industries, etc. You had to qualify as a manufacturer. There were certain types of vehicles, you had to have the right technology, etc. Where I think they messed up was they said, we'll give this subsidy, but we'll give it in the form of an interest-free loan. So we went to them and we said, why are you trying to solve a financing problem when none exists? All right, because in your petrol market, there's no meaningful bank financing, right? It's all done by the informal sector. So we suggested to them, okay, you give this subsidy to the manufacturer when their bike is ready. And they said no. They said, we will have a website. People will come and put their names and details in. Then we'll have, a lottery. We'll pick 40,000 people out. Then they will go to the banks, and the banks will approve their financing, and we will pay the interest to the banks. And I think there was a credit guarantee to the banks as well. And I told them it will never work because you are trying to. And this, by the way, they said this percentage for women, equal allocation by provinces, and I just told them you're trying to solve every single problem we have as a country in this one policy. Whereas the goal, if you want to judge an EV adoption scheme, the only way I would judge it by the number of EVs that's put on the road. And PAVE 1 was unfortunately a disaster for that. And it was because
I hadn't heard of PAVE 1 before today.
Yeah, well, you should have, right? I mean,
yeah, I should have.
Yeah, so. I mean, I should have in the sense that it
should have been the news. There should have been some numbers, some follow-up. Yeah.
By the way, the government has real constraints, right? So it's not like they don't know. And they did a lot of work on this. But PAVE 2, the good news is PAVE 2, from what I hear, I don't know for sure, they're paying now, is going to be a direct subsidy to the manufacturer when their vehicle is registered. So there's a verification process. It will lower the initial cost. You don't have to go through a lottery. If the guy wants to finance it through a bank, he can, but he doesn't have to, right? So I think the government unnecessarily makes things very difficult by adding a lot of steps. And those steps are added because we live in a political system where if anything goes wrong, it is automatically assumed that the minister or whoever in charge, secretary in charge, has somehow personally benefited or allowed one of his buddies to benefit, which creates a suboptimal way of making policy.
The government has not really induced trust in the people.
That is true. That is true.
In any of the political parties that have come to power.
But we cannot forever make things that don't work because we've had a poor record of corruption in the government. I mean, that's
also inefficiency and bureaucracy and red tape and too many mysteries and too many steps.
Yeah, so I think PAVE 2 will be a lot cleaner from what I hear.
When is PAVE 2 being implemented or is it
I think it's about to be launched.
It's about to be launched. Okay.
2 and 3 wheelers both, by the way.
2 and 3 wheelers. Yeah. We will talk about 3 wheelers, but first I want to ask you mentioned a subsidy for manufacturing.
Yeah.
Now, what has been the rate of localization for 2 wheelers and what is the potential for localization of electric 2 wheelers?
Yeah. So localization, in Pakistan, we haven't localized a lot of things. We've localized motorcycles, we've localized fans, and I think to some extent tractors, right? Other than that, I don't know
not cars for sure.
No, not cars. No, don't get me started on the car states because those are.
They say that we have localized
one of the worst things to happen to this country.
Absolutely, 100% agree.
So right now, I think you can get to 50% localization very quickly, right? Because the essential body of a 2-wheeler.
That's much higher than a lot of the cars that are being manufactured in Pakistan.
That's right. They're not being manufactured. They're literally
tightening nuts and bolts and importing.
It's an embarrassment, if you ask me, right?
100%. I'm glad somebody is saying it because there's so much hedging around this topic.
There's no hedging. All the auto assemblers they've been terrible for this country.
Yes, the infant industry argument, and they still get protected.
Yeah, well, because they show up with the right ambassadors, right? That's what happens, right? Gift bags and all that. So 50% you can do very quickly. After that, you get to the battery, the motor, and the BMS, right?
What is BMS?
BMS is basically a hardware that controls charging it's a hardware and software that controls charging of the battery, protects the battery. It's the battery management system, right? So I think within batteries, the first thing you can localize is not cell production, but you can localize the production of battery packs. So the way it works is each battery pack has, I don't know, 100 or whatever individual cells. So right now, most of the manufacturers are importing battery packs, so which are cells in a casing with the welding done. So it's very easy to localize the manufacturing of the pack itself. So then you would be importing the cells and the casing and the individual welding and all that can be done here. That's pretty easy. After that, I think you could eventually localize the motor as well. By the way, fans have motors as well, right? So it's not the same motor, but it's not rocket science to build a motor. Unfortunately, right now, because of a tax anomaly, if you make a motor in Pakistan, you have to pay 18% sales tax to supply to a local guy. Whereas if you import it from China, it attracts 1% sales tax. So which
so many
again
industry
only we
leaders saying that it's cheaper to import than manufacturing locally.
Well, it's one thing for it to be cheaper to import, but if it's cheaper to import because of a tax anomaly, this I call a reverse tariff. We are the only country where I've ever seen this happen. You're tariffing your own production.
So why though? Is it certain rent-seeking behavior benefiting,
or
just inefficiency?
I think it's probably inefficiency. I don't think this particular one is rent-seeking.
I mean, the level of inefficiency then in Pakistan.
Actually, I think what happened was you negotiated a free trade agreement with China. You didn't think about this, and you put it in there, and now either you take the local sales tax down or you try and renegotiate with the big. Well, that's not happening, right?
Yeah.
So.
When I was in Pakistan Business Council, we analyzed the Pakistan-China Free Trade Agreement. Now, this is a bunch of fresh grads, almost first jobs, sitting easily available data, and we found so many anomalies that we're trying to sell things that there is no demand in China, or we're trying to sell things that we do not manufacture. So that FTA was such a mess. It's one of the reasons Chinese goods flooded Pakistani market.
Yeah. So the Chinese are very good at negotiating trade.
And we are really bad.
Yes, correct.
Yes. Okay. So there's a lot of scope for localization for batteries to a certain level. I think, localizing manufacturing of electric two-wheelers, but batteries is advanced technology, I'm assuming.
I think cells is advanced. Yeah.
What about the maintenance? I mean, you know how Pakistanis are. We need a local neighborhood mechanic to be able to fix it.
Okay, so this is actually a big challenge because I think the most, what I tell all my manufacturing friends is, selling the bike is one thing, but if you don't have after sales, it's not going to work. So this is a challenge. You have to build out after sales, pan-Pakistan after sales. It's also a challenge for us on the credit side, by the way, because the guy may be perfectly willing and has the money to pay his lease, but if his bike isn't working, he's not going to pay me. So I think you've identified this challenge, and I think Honda petrol bikes, one of the reasons they've done so well is
anybody can fix them, like any local mechanic can fix
because
them.
Their after sales historically has been very good. So this is something that will come.
But like we have BYD and they have people going abroad to learn how to maintain their car. So as that ecosystem grows, there's going to be a trickle down of knowledge,
100%,
right?
100%.
Like you said that if you have the EVs, they'll find a way to charge. So the same way the mechanics will learn.
I think you will develop an after sales industry in this country. That's not rocket science.
So should subsidies target financing or should it directly reduce vehicle cost? Because we were discussing VA1 and
reduce vehicle cost. Solves the problem. The problem is high initial cost. Okay. If you were so worried about the financing cost that is applicable on the average Pakistani.
So how would the government bring down the vehicle prices?
Every time a vehicle is registered by approved manufacturers, they get a check. Okay, and if there is a certainty of that check, they will reduce their selling price.
How many local manufacturers of EV bikes are there?
I think there's 80, 90. But of those...
EV bikes?
Yes.
80, 90?
Registered. But of those, I think probably 30 odd are actually...
So we have 30 odd manufacturers functioning for EV bikes. Is there that much demand?
They're trying. If you look at the US in the 20s, I think there were over 100 car companies, and 3 of them survived. So that's not a bad thing.
No,
Right?
it's a phenomenal thing.
So
Competition, survival of the fittest.
Well, people
Best
are-
thing for consumers.
People are seeing a $1 billion plus market opportunity, right? So they're going to try and get into it. So
So manufacturing of EV two-wheelers.
well, manufacturing and I would say assembly. Yeah.
Ecosystem of EV two-wheelers is about $1 billion opportunity.
Well, no, the total bike market in Pakistan is $1 billion market.
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
And you want the new EVs, the new vehicles to be bought, two-wheelers should be electric.
Well, so we have a lot of budding states, right? And they
I
all
like that term, budding states.
Yeah. So they all want to take over this market or a big chunk of it.
But instead of two-wheelers, how about we start with mass transit? Like in Lahore, in Punjab, you have a lot more.
I am all for it. I think that's the easiest. And there, thankfully, the government, so mass transit requires the government. So there, you don't have a financing issue like you do for the average person. So I'm all for it, and I think you'll see a lot more of it.
Yeah, because that would create I think there's also that adoption fear, right?
Yes.
You don't know an EV, you don't understand an EV.
Yes.
So if there's mass transit, people will just be more comfortable.
Yeah, it started already. I saw some over here as well.
We see the white ones at Bahria town as well. Around, initially when you would see an EV, it was like, oh look, you pointed out, and
right,
now it's.
Right. Well, this is like in Lahore, like 5 years ago when you saw a lady on a bike, you would be like,
yes.
But now
I think it's a lot more common in Lahore than in Karachi. In Karachi,
I'm not sure.
Personally, when I'm driving, I keep my windows up even if the AC is not working because people tend to comment. They call out names when you're driving and you're a female. So I can understand the hesitancy to shift to two-wheelers. But then again, there's an economic necessity. It's just too expensive for women to not earn if they want to maintain a certain standard of living for their families as well.
That's right.
So do you think with the availability of more scooties, because scooties are more female-oriented, or at least I think so, there is a higher likelihood of female mobility?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think two things have happened. One is there are more women coming in the workforce. So economics drives cultural change, not the other way around, right? So the economic necessity has brought them into the workplace, and they need a way to get to and from work. So what happens is, I did a survey in another company I'm involved in Lahore. It's either some of them have their own vehicle, right, and some of them a husband or brother picks and drops them, and some of them use Yango or InDrive, right? And with the petrol prices where they are, I had this one woman who was spending 30% of her income on transport.
Yeah, for sure.
And I remember when I started off years ago in New York as an investment banker, I was given some advice that you should not spend more than 1/3 of your income on rent. And here we have somebody spending 1/3 of their income on transport for work, just work. So that gets us kind of very worked up. This is not the way things should work.
Absolutely.
And if we can save these people some money and earn some money ourselves, we're helping everyone, right? And we're helping the country as well. So we're making money, but we're also doing decent for the country.
The first few years when I started working, my brother used to pick and drop. That was a condition of me being allowed to work, that my brother had to be the one picking and drop me. If the fuel prices were then at what they are right now, if the inflation was then, I would not have had a career because they were like, it just does not make sense.
It's too expensive.
Because when you'd
probably be at negative when you started off.
I would be a homemaker. I would be a housewife right now for sure, because I wasn't earning enough to justify that expense. Especially if you're a female and this is your first job and you have a male family member picking and dropping, you'd be like, why?
Yeah.
It makes no economic sense. So yes, we need economical mobility, and EVs are one way forward. So for sure. One thing that we have not talked about are the environmental gains. I mean, honestly, nobody cares about the environment. Nobody is going for solar.
I live in Lahore. I care.
Nobody is going for solar because they care about the environment. They're going for solar to bring down electricity bills.
Well, true. But solar actually doesn't directly impact what we call smog in Lahore. So one thing Karachi is much better at, because you have the sea, is that there's less smog here. So solar has no impact on it, because
I don't think somebody will go, I'm not going to buy a normal bike, I'm going to buy an EV bike because
that's correct.
It's good for the environment, it's good for the pocket.
That's correct. So it's not going to drive consumer behavior, but it should incentivize the government.
Exactly. And as a cherry on top, what are the environmental benefits?
No, let me explain to you the environmental benefits. So when, and I'm not an engineer, but all of these EV guys have given me some enough knowledge to be dangerous. So when a liter of petrol is burnt, the amount of CO2 that is released is the same regardless of the engine. Okay, there may be more or less efficient engines, but that's a physical fact. The amount of what I think are called NOx gases is not the same. It depends on the quality of the engine. Okay, this is primarily unburnt fuel, and it's higher on 2 and 3 wheelers because their engines are not as efficient as cars. Okay, so if you electrify 2 and 3 wheelers, CO2 is a global problem. It's not a smog problem. The smog problem are these gases. You get rid of them, you'll have a huge impact on smog in Pakistan.
So, for example, if in Lahore, magically, all the vehicles would be EVs.
Yes.
So then a lot of that smog problem will be solved.
So I was in Lahore during COVID, okay, which happened in smog season. I've never seen the sky so blue in my life. It was just the cars were off the road. And in Sialkot, you could see the mountains in Kashmir, which they hadn't seen in decades, right? So I think that is, I can say definitively is true.
Yeah. That would be one of the biggest benefits, because smog and air quality reduces lifespan so much, and there's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't matter how rich you are. You have to eventually breathe in that air.
Yes.
So, yeah, huge argument to be made for EVs now. Amar Habib Khan did this fabulous series of articles, and anybody who's interested in EV should go look up Dawn, look up Amar Habib Khan. And one of the stories that he made the case for battery swapping, that instead of having a charging infrastructure, you have a battery swapping infrastructure. Yusuf Nazar did a story as well on that. So do you think that if charging infrastructure is a problem, battery swapping can play a role?
Okay, so we tend to be agnostic with regards to which electric solution will work for the customer. Right? So we're a finance company, right? There is a space for electric for swapping. The best space for swapping is, let's assume you are a Food Panda rider, right? And you make 5 trips to the Panda Mart as well as several restaurants a day. So you have a natural place to change when you need to, right? Or you're an employee and your employer has provided you the service, right? So I think we know Chughtai's diagnostic lab company has, they're in our building and they use zip bikes, which is a swappable technology. Works great for them. They have 3 8-hour shifts. One guy comes, there's a stand there, takes out the battery, puts it in, takes 60 seconds. Works great for that.
I am going to follow up on that, because this is something I would really like to explore.
Yeah. So, but for the market as a whole, I have my doubts if it will be the mass market that goes into swappables. And the reason for that is there you definitely need infrastructure, right? Because you need these swapping stations set up, and it needs to be in a city like Karachi, how many you would need a lot. The other issue is obviously then your battery has to be more susceptible to theft, because it has to come
be
out
easily
acceptable, right? But there is a third problem over there, and again, we don't really have a dog in the race. Any electrification is good for us, but there's one additional problem with swapping, which is since they're not selling you the bike, their capital is tied up in the battery, and they will obviously want to earn a return on the battery. So the savings that you generate for the ultimate consumer are lower. So it's a trade-off, right? So your initial cost is lower, but your savings are lower as well.
Fair enough. We have talked a lot about 2-wheelers. Let's touch on 3-wheelers now, because even now, cars, Yango, whatever, it's still most convenient to step out of the office and hail down a rickshaw.
Yes.
So, but again, there are not that many 3-wheeler electric rickshaws, and is there a case for it?
There's a massive case for it. So your traditional rickshaw in Pakistan costs 4.5 lakhs new, and the electric one will cost you 10 to 12, depending on the range, right? There are, I believe, 4 manufacturers that we are aware of. The original is Sazgar, that has an electric version, which we personally own 15 of, which we're working on a pilot in Lahore. There's a company called Tezmo, there's Tez Raftar, and then there's a very interesting company called Yes Electromotive, right? The challenge over there, so a rickshaw in Lahore, by the way, probably does 150 to 180 kilometers a day. so which is great, right? It's ripe for electrification because you're driving it so much. The challenge becomes when you're talking about, for that kind of range, you're probably looking at 12 lakhs. The driver does not have the documented income. So what I think you'll see is initial interest will be fleet operators themselves, okay? But the interesting thing about rickshaws, by the way, is the driver doesn't own the rickshaw himself anyway. It's always owned by an informal party that has some guy will have 5, some guy will have 20, and he gives it to them on daily rent, right? So until those guys get convinced to buy and do the same for rickshaws, it will take some time.
And they would not have an incentive, no? Because I'm assuming a certain amount goes to them. So why should they?
Their incentive is, I'll tell you, whatever the driver saves in fuel, he has that much more money to pay you in rent.
So given the range you set for a rickshaw per day and the cost, what will be the payback of a rickshaw?
The payback of a rickshaw should be around 2.5 years.
And what will be the payback currently with the non?
Oh, no, I was giving you the electric rickshaw.
Yeah, so what's the payback for the non-electric rickshaws?
It's
probably less.
No, I don't think
no?
so. No, you spend a lot of money on LPG on a regular rickshaw. Well, I don't know off the top of my head. But interestingly, rickshaws don't have great resale, right? So you don't have that issue there. And the legacy rickshaw, petrol rickshaw, is a very, very fragile vehicle. So when we insure rickshaws, the problem there is not theft, what the insurance company charges us. The problem is when it gets into an accident, it's almost always totaled, right? So some of the new rickshaw companies, not all, the electric rickshaw companies are actually building proper frames, and so sturdier vehicles, which, I talked to one of these manufacturers that has actually engineered the steering wheel to the side, and his rickshaw looks much more like a car and feels like a car, and it's got leg room like a car. So why he didn't add a fourth wheel? And this is very interesting because only in Pakistan, because he told me, because if I add a fourth wheel, which I can, because I've done all this engineering to move the steering wheel to the side, it will become illegal. Because then it's a car, and we have the Saints who've written the policy, God knows how long ago, that have written, I think, primarily with the fear that some young kid from UET or NUST would one day, make something that could actually be made and sold in this country. So those are called quadricycles, by the way. So quadricycles are vehicles that are limited by size and weight. They're not permitted on highways, and in exchange for that, they have lower requirements to be approved. They exist in Europe, in China. I think there's a huge case for that, for rickshaws even to be converted into quadricycles. There's no reason for a rickshaw to have 3 wheels. If it can have 4, it'll be safer. So we need those regulations in route. And so our target on the rickshaw side of things is actually to target commercial operators that aren't passengers necessarily, but are distributors of products. Okay, so distribution, last mile distribution, a lot of it is done by rickshaw. And if you have a electric version, and those guys don't care about resale. All they care about is operating cost, right? And if you can provide them a rickshaw that they can use to deliver their product at a fraction of the operating cost, so that's a no-brainer. So that's how we're going in the rickshaw market.
So from the discussion, it seems to me that it would be the easiest for the government to go for mass transit electrification.
Correct.
Then there's a case for electrification of 2-wheelers, but I think the electrification of 3-wheelers in that ecosystem will come last when everything else has shifted.
I'll disagree with you slightly. I think so. The way 2-wheelers operate, right? And I operate a fleet of 15, right? So we have a yard in Ichra. We bought them just to demonstrate that they would work. We got an operator, and we have applied for a NICA rate.
What's the NICA rate?
So the government decided that charging stations could buy electricity. I think it's at 39 rupees, right?
So that's the NICA rate.
That's a NICA rate. We don't have it yet because the geniuses that came up with it, and it was a good policy, they decided that I needed a couple of NOCs from some local bodies in Lahore, who we went to. They had no idea. We're getting it resolved. So once all those bottlenecks are taken out, these people that currently invest in fleets of rickshaws and rent them out daily to drivers, they should have an incentive to do the same with electric. So you will see that. And by the way, the ride-hailing firms themselves are very supportive of electrification of three-wheelers. Right?
So you mentioned Nika, right? You're in the process of it. Has anybody gotten the 3 rupees?
Yeah, I think 1 or 2 people have gotten it.
One or two people in Pakistan.
Yes.
Wow, that's a very high adoption rate.
Well, see, this is a general comment. We write great policies, but we always put 2 or 3 NOCs that are required, and then things never happen, right?
So if you were to list all the bottlenecks, what would be the level of priority? What's the first bottleneck that should be addressed? What's the second? What's the third?
I think I wouldn't think in terms of bottlenecks. I think the government is moving in the right direction by giving a cash subsidy to the manufacturers. Okay, I don't think the government should really worry about cars as much as 2 and 3 wheelers, right? The dollar payback. If I look at importing a 2-wheeler and a 3-wheeler, and the fuel saved, we think the dollar payback for 2 and 3 wheelers is 1 to 1.5 years. Cars is 10 years, right? So I don't think they need to worry about cars. They should give a subsidy to the manufacturer, then get out of the way.
Especially as the manufacturers have a higher rate of localization than the car companies.
Right. Well, higher rate of localization plus the amount of fuel consumed relative to the capital cost is so much higher. It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
And we have electricity, and we are short petrol, and the Strait of Hormuz is closed. I think even we can get this one right.
So, okay, last question. What's happening right now, and with the budget coming up, what would you recommend?
Well,
or is anything happening in the budget that could help or hinder?
There is some talk of to encourage electrification. I think the sales tax on EVs was 1% versus 18%.
Is there 18% in the upcoming budget?
I'm hearing that and there are. The IMF apparently is pushing for it, so obviously we can't do anything. And I'm pretty sure certain people that don't want electrification because of their vested interests are probably pushing for it. So that I would say.
I mean, that seems very sad that in a country that should actively encourage electrification.
Well, on the one hand, you're giving a subsidy, and on the other hand, you are increasing the tax rate. Right? So actually, I made this similar point. We do this all the time. I think about 3 months ago, remember when they gave a subsidy on petrol again, even though we had that bad experience already? And the government, for some reason, called me on this Zoom call. There was like 40 manufacturers and me. And they were like, we want to electrify as soon as possible. Please tell us what we could do. And I was the last one to ask a question. And my question was, why are you subsidizing petrol if you want to increase electrification in this country? So we tend to sometimes work against ourselves.
Yes. As you mentioned, it's cheaper to import than to manufacture.
Yeah, but I don't think we can do that anymore. I think that the old macro way of running this country is not going to work anymore. You have to manufacture, you have to export.
I think that the future for the world has to be electrification. And if anything, that the war has accelerated that process.
That's right.
For sure. And I think the economic sense, the maths of 2-wheelers is just that of solar. Even if you make it harder, this is something that's going to happen. It's just the rate at which it happens is going to differ.
Well, one thing we haven't discussed, which is the prices of lithium batteries are coming down, right? So Pakistanis adopted solar, but it was really the reduction in price driven by Chinese capacity that enabled it to happen. Similar thing is happening in batteries. And if battery prices fall further, then we won't have this discussion of, it costs so much more, etc. And it'll just be a no-brainer.
So it's a no-brainer. The future is electrification of vehicles.
A question of when, not if.
Thank you so much. This was a very enlightening discussion. I truly enjoyed having it.
Thank you.